Is there a GM or a coach that you've had that experience with that you're like, I got to watch that guy?
Well, I think Howie Roseman's one of those guys. He's very smart.
He keeps coming up.
Yeah, and look, Howie and I have done some deals
Yeah.
in the past. He's really a bright guy. He's done a great job in Philly, but he's always one of the guys that okay, I got to put both hands in my back pockets when I'm talking to Howie.
What's up, y'all? Thanks for joining the Green Light Pod. I'm your host, Chris Long. Today we've got Mickey Loomis, GM for the New Orleans Saints for 20 years. He's been with that franchise now. When you think about the Saints, if you grew up when I grew up, I'm 38 years old, I do not remember thinking the Saints are pretty good. It looks fun to be a Saints fan. I know the fans used to wear paper bags on their heads. Like, everybody's seen those pictures. Fast forward to 2023. If you grew up in the Drew Brees era, the Saints are a fun team to pull for and among the NFL's elite. And a lot of it is due to Mickey Loomis. And I'm talking about the big chances he took going to get Drew Brees, going to get Sean Payton, to the 06 draft, to I think it was the 17 draft. This guy has his fingerprints all over the successes of the New Orleans Saints over the past 2 decades. And I love talking to him. He was awesome. Love the guy. So Saints fans, you probably already know what kind of guy he is. I had never met him and seemed like a great dude to have in your organization. Enjoy the interview. Like, subscribe, that whole thing. Tell a friend about the pod. And my question for y'all, locals and otherwise, all you NFL fans, I know the Saints fans are going to say what they're going to say. Broncos or Saints? Who's got the better record this season? Is it going to be Mickey and the Saints and Dennis Allen, or is it going to be the project that Sean Payton has on his hands? Is he going to succeed there? So let us know in the comments. Thanks a lot for watching. This is one I'm really excited about. I've never talked to Mickey Loomis, at least especially not in this format, over Zoom, talking football. I mean, this guy has got one of the best track records in the league. You dig back in it, and there's guys you forget that he drafted that are incredible players. So really, really excited to have him. Mickey, how you doing?
I'm great, Chris. I'm excited to talk to you because look, when I started in 1983 with the Seattle Seahawks, we had Howie Long and the Raiders in our division. So this is quite a journey that going from watching Howie kick our ass to talking with you on this podcast.
A journey through time. Yeah, 15 years with the Seahawks, man. You got to see some good rushers. I know the Derek Thomas game was the Seahawks. Wasn't it Craig back there that got sacked 7 times?
It was, but the whole key. In fact, I just watched that not long ago. I was telling our guys about it, and he missed the 8th sack when Dave Craig ducked under it, stood up, and threw a last-second touchdown to Paul Scanzi, and we won the game.
That's incredible.
Amazing.
It's also important you point that out because I had no idea who won that game. All I ever heard about was Derek Thomas, 7 sacks. There's always one missed sack as a rusher. You know that.
Yeah, there's always one miss.
A couple. Yep, exactly. So, hey, I got a burning question for you, man. 2008 draft. Let's say I fell to 7. Walk me through step by step how you would trade out of that pick.
Yeah, no, we would have taken you clearly.
Okay.
We would have taken you in a heartbeat, especially especially knowing what I know now.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. No, I was going back through that draft class, and yeah, it was a close call. I almost ended up in a few places, but it would have been fun down there. You guys have just had such a good run. There's so much I want to get into, but I think the most interesting thing to me is this, because we've had Sean Payton on the show, and Sean was driving through Louisiana or something. This is like last year. And you know Sean, he was like, yeah, I got some time for you. We'll just see how long it goes. And we were on for an hour and 40 minutes with the guy. He just loves talking ball. And you guys have probably a great relationship, 15, 16 years. What's it like trading your friend?
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're right about Sean and talking. He's never met a yes or no question ever. Listen, I love Sean Payton. He's a great football coach.
Yeah.
He's a great friend. He's beyond generous with his with his time and his resources, and that was a tough deal. But look, he needed the break, number one, from the year before. It was time for him to take a break and recharge himself. And look, the benefit to the Saints was that he was under contract, and so if he had an opportunity to coach with another team, we weren't going to stop that, but we were going to get some compensation back, and worked out. It worked out with the Denver Broncos, and look, he's going to do a great job for him. And hopefully we'll take advantage of the picks that we got.
It's so funny to me because I'm imagining being a player. Like, there actually was one time I almost got traded, but the conversation it's very business-like. It's minimal. It's like the GM's, working through your agent, that sort of thing. They might ask you a question or two, but I'm imagining you and Sean over a beer. Like, hey, buddy, where you want to go? Are there moments like that where he's like, I wonder how much you can get for me? How does that go?
Well, it was that's a good question. Listen, he called a couple times and you're asking too much, and I would say, no, I'm not.
Uh-huh.
There was a little bit of that, but it was pretty cordial, and I wasn't negotiating with him. I was negotiating with Greg Penner and George Payton, and it worked out great. It was never adversarial. It was always how can we make this work for both teams, and fortunately we were able to do that.
How do you find a value for a coach? Like I hear upstairs, which I would endearingly call like the second level of a building. You guys have all these charts where you try to figure out what the trade value of a player is based on all these performance scores. How do you do that with a coach? You just start from scratch?
Well, listen, there have been some trades in the past. John Gruden got traded. Bill Parcells got traded. There was compensation for Bill Belichick. There was compensation, I think, for Herm Edwards. That was another one. So it's happened a few times. But look, I just believe that, outside of the franchise quarterback, I think the most important person in the building relative to winning is the head coach. And when you have a proven commodity, that's worth a lot. And I think we stuck to our guns and got we didn't get what I would have liked to have gotten, but I think it was fair.
Yeah, no, you worked out really well because most people would say, well, Denver's got the leverage just by having the conversation because it probably means he's not going to be your coach next year. But you guys made out pretty good. And, I think back to 2006, you took big swings. I mean, this is one of the most legendary off seasons in football history. I mean, you go out and you get Sean in Dallas, you Drew Brees in San Diego and the whole thing. But with Sean, it's hard for me to remove myself from this sensibility where I know Sean Payton's a legend in our game. It's 2023. When he was coaching for Parcells, every stop along the road for him wasn't successful to that point. So how was that move received? Can you liken it to making a type of hire today? And was it something that you were nervous about? Because I feel like it probably put your career on the line making all those moves.
Yeah, well, look, I think when you're a general manager, you're putting your career on the line with almost every move. It feels like every first round pick and every coach hire. But look, there was a lot of good candidates then, and the challenge for us that year was there were 10 teams looking for head coaches. And given, Hurricane Katrina and the things that had happened with the city of New Orleans, we were probably 10th by a long margin of desirable places to be. And so, look, I just, I think sometimes when you interview someone, you just know. And I think we needed, at that time, I knew we needed high energy. We needed someone from the Parcells school of, tough, disciplined type of football. And at our very first meeting, I had a good feeling about Sean. And I just felt like he's exactly what our team and what our city needed, our community needed. And it worked out. And, Drew was another tough decision because of the injuries
Yeah.
coming off of. But that was both those things were really under the radar. The big move that year, the thing that got all the publicity and all the attention was just drafting Reggie Bush. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because look, Reggie at that time was probably recognized as one of the greatest college football players of all time after his career there. And so that's what made the big splash. It wasn't, the Sean Payton hire or even the Drew Brees signing. Now, and both of
Yeah.
those turned out to be spectacular.
Yeah, they worked out. The 2006 draft class, incredible. Like, you look at that list. Was Rob Ninkovich the one that got away, Mickey? Because,
Yeah.
my man Rob Ninkovich, you were like, I got so many damn good players in this draft, I'm just going to make you a snapper.
Oh, my gosh.
Is Rob the one that got away?
Yes. And, that's an interesting thing about that class is that I think we had 5 or 6 guys in that draft class that played 10 years or more.
Yeah.
And that's really incredible. You have to go a long ways to find a draft class for a team that had that many guys have 10-year careers,
Yeah.
including our 2 7th-round choices, Zach Strief and Marcus Colston. So, and Rob had a 10-year plus career. It just wasn't with us. And we had 2 cracks at him. We had him in camp. He was on our team for a year. Then we let him go. He went to Miami, came back to us, and then we let him go again. And I know, look, Sean laments that a number of times. So do I, because Rob's been he was a really good player. Helped New England win some Super Bowls, and it's one we missed. We didn't miss on the draft pick. We missed on our evaluation once we had him.
No, yeah. But so many good players in that draft. It's just incredible. You talk about going out and taking that chance to get Drew Brees with the shoulder. Have you learned anything about taking chances on players that might get red flagged elsewhere? Because as I understood it, like Saban wanted him down in Miami, but the medical staff was like, nope.
Yeah, look, I think that's been rehashed a number of times. He clearly had a serious injury.
Yeah.
And I just remember talking with Dr. Andrews about it. And, every time you talk to a doctor about a surgery they've done, of course, they'll tell you it's the best surgery, the best work they've ever done.
Best
right?
one in history.
That's their standard line.
Yeah.
But he did say this. He said, look, I can't tell you that Drew will be back this year at 100%. He said, but I can tell you that 2 years from now, he'll be, if not 100%, very close to 100%. And so for me and for us, a lot of it was, well, okay, we might have to wait a year to get the Drew Brees we expect. But if you draft somebody at the top of the draft, it's going to take 2 or 3 years to develop them. So that's the same type of wait time, and yet we know pretty much what we're going to get at the end of that time. When Miami's decision was made, and it was based on their medical evaluation, I don't fault that. I think the interesting thing there is that there were a number of teams that needed quarterbacks that year, and none of them kicked the tires on Drew, and so that's really the error, I think, as opposed to Miami, who brought him in, really wanted him, and ultimately got talked out of it by the medical evaluation. So, hey, look, I'm glad it worked out for us. Glad it worked out for us.
How psyched are you about, there's certain franchises, I thought Indy for a while there at quarterback, it'd be like Phillip Rivers follows Andrew Luck, who follows Peyton Manning. It's just, you don't take a lot of time off trying to rebuild. And what I love about you and what you've done in New Orleans as a player is like, hey, we're not rebuilding. We're trying to win. You had this Hall of Fame quarterback, and you could see the decline, like with any player. I'm sure there's a process with which you're like, okay, what's our 5-year plan? Are we going to try to win right now? Are we going to take some time off and reset? It seems like you guys are aggressive with Derek Carr and some of the signings that you've made. So how exciting is it to see Derek Carr, and what are you guys going to give him that's a little bit different than what he had in Vegas?
Yeah, I'm very excited about having Derek here. There's a lot of similarities to, when we brought Drew in, and when we us getting Derek. Derek's farther along in his career than Drew was. Look, I don't know exactly what'll be different between here and the Raiders. I just know how we do things, and I think there's a stability here that has existed for a long time, and a culture that we protect, a locker room that we protect in terms of the way we operate, and hopefully he can flourish in that environment. But there's always that decision about, tear down, rebuild, all those kinds of things. And look, I just feel like, and I felt like we've had a good team around them. We had a good draft in 2017, and put some core players on our team that are still in the prime of their career. And we've been able to add some pieces since then. And so I just feel like, defensively, we've got a very good roster. Offensively, we've got some weapons, particularly with having, Mike Thomas back and healthy. And so we've got an opportunity. And it's not going to just rest on the shoulders of the quarterback and Derek. It's gonna be incumbent upon our whole team to play well. And I think we can do that.
You talked about culture. Like, you're one of the franchises that actually has a culture, in my opinion. I think byproduct of you being there so long and Sean being there so long, I feel like risk taking and having balls is like part of the Saints culture. Is that just Sean, and is that ever going to wear off? Like, first thing I think of with Sean is that onside kick, and I'm wondering, you as the GM, like, when do you get the word that we're going to open the second half in a game that we're down by kicking an onside kick? And did it ever make you nervous how aggressive you guys were?
Well, I think you're always nervous. If you're a competitor, you've got those nerves because you want to win so badly. But I would say this: I would never ever fault a coach for going out and trying to win a game, because look, it's hard to win in the National Football League, and I don't think the answer is to try not to lose a game. And so I love when coaches take chances. Now, they have to be calculated chances, right? They can't be foolish chances. And Sean, for as aggressive as he is very calculated. He's not going to go for it or not make a play unless he believes really strongly that it's going to be successful. He's not just throwing plays and throwing decisions against the wall. He's very calculated. He's not a gunslinger in the sense of just throwing stuff out and hoping it works. He's got a plan and a confidence in both himself and his team. And look, I think Dennis Allen has those same traits. And so, I like that we're aggressive. I think players respond to that too. If you put it on their shoulders and you say, "Hey, go win it for us," more often than not, your players, they'll make plays.
Yeah, Doug Peterson was a lot like that, where you kind of were empowered by the risk taking. Honestly, it was funny. It just made me think of this. When we came down to New Orleans after y'all kicked our ass early in the season, I think it was 44-17.
Yeah.
I don't know how I remember that. We almost had y'all up there, man, and y'all took some really calculated risks. I mean, there was the fake punt. There was a fourth down inside the 5-yard line, and those were the differences in the game, and that's the risks that you take that are calculated.
Yeah, and look, I remember that well because Malcolm Jenkins, who had been with us, we drafted and played with us, was pretty demonstrative with Sean toward the end of that game. And, he came back and played for us after that, and we laughed about it. But, you guys had a really good team. We got on a roll in that first game, and we're lucky. And then the second game was much more indicative of, how close our two teams were. And we were lucky to win, really. I think we had a play toward the end of the game. You guys were marching down to, I think, get a score, and we made a play.
Yeah, you guys, it was a great game. Some draft questions. I know we're closer to cut time than draft time. That's probably what's on your mind, so maybe you'd rather answer some draft questions. When you have head coaches, I've asked GMs and head coaches this before, but who's a GM or a coach that might call about a player and you're like, what's going on here? This guy's too smart. He's probably taking me to the cleaners. He can't be sending me, this can't be a good deal for me. Is there a GM or a coach that you've had that experience with that you're like, I got to watch that guy?
Well, I think Howie Roseman's one of those guys. He's very smart.
He keeps coming up.
And look, Howie and I have done some deals in the past. He's really a bright guy. He's done a great job in Philly. But he's always one of the guys that, I'll get to put both hands in my back pockets when I'm talking to Howie. and I mean that in the most complimentary way.
Yeah. Yeah, he's great. I mean, we got a Bill Belichick answer before. I don't know if you've ever done business with Bill.
Yeah, I have
Yeah,
a number of
yeah,
times.
yeah. It's shorter
Yeah,
phone call.
it's all business. But Bill's really he's really straightforward,
Yeah,
and I appreciate that about him. He's really straightforward about what he wants and what he'll do, and if it works, great, and if it doesn't, he's fine with that. So
yeah.
I
That's
like
how I remember him
I
as a
like doing
coach
business with
too.
those guys. Yeah,
I
I
remember him as a
bet.
coach. We're gonna move you into a three technique if it works out, you know. But nah, Bill's awesome. And then Howie, when I asked Mike Mayock this very same question, he was like, "Yeah, Howie will call and he'll ask you how your family is. He'll butter you up for 15 minutes,
Yeah,
and then he'll go into the trade."
yeah, that's
So,
exactly right.
yep, your hands are back here. What's the latest? I always wonder this because sometimes, on TV we're watching and it's always like the pick is in right before. I think it's to build suspense and that sort of thing. And usually, like you guys know who you're probably going to draft when the clock goes off. But I always wonder, is there like a trade that fell through at some point or a situation where you guys end up in kind of a panic and it's like down to the wire and you got to get a pick in? It's not like me picking fantasy football because I don't have a system. You got a whole wall there. But have you ever ended up in that situation where you got to turn that pick in last minute?
Yeah, I think, well, we hold it. I think most teams hold that pick to the last minute just in case there's a late call
Yeah.
with the trade you can't refuse, which almost never happens, by the way. Um, I think, particularly in the early rounds, the first, second, third round, I don't ever recall a situation where we didn't know exactly who we were going to pick,
Yeah.
you know, uh, within three or four picks before we even get on the clock. I
Yeah.
think later in the draft sometimes when you're down to, well, I want this one guy, in the fifth round, and all of a sudden the team right in front of you takes that guy, then that puts you in a little bit of a tailspin because you don't have someone that you have a conviction on like you did,
Right.
the one guy you want. So I
Well, it
think,
probably takes a second to get over that last guy because you were like, man, I've been looking at I've been in love with this guy for a year. And there
yes,
was a run on tackles, and now he's not mine anymore.
yeah, that's right. And I think particularly in the mid to late rounds, the fourth round, fifth round, sixth round, there's always
Yeah.
somebody you have targeted that you think you can get in that area that you're going to be really excited about. You may have a third round or even a second round grade on those guys, and you're thinking, but I can get this guy late, and then someone jumps up and grabs him right in front of you. It's a bit of a shock to your system, and you have to recover. But those scenarios, we play them out for, 100 times in the weeks leading up to the draft, so we're really prepared for it. But occasionally, something like that happens.
It sounds like you might have somebody in your mind that maybe that you wanted to pick, and
Yeah,
had
well, I don't
somebody's.
want to disclose it because he turned out to be a really good player, and
Oh God.
I'm still
Okay.
pissed off about it.
Okay.
But
Yeah, that's good. I can respect that. You don't want to give it any energy. How about, dude? This is the most interesting thing. I didn't even know you were doing the Pelicans thing too for a while, and you're in the NBA. So you're. I assume you're in their draft room. You kind of
mhm,
know how that whole thing. By the way, Drew Holiday trade. Hats off.
yeah,
Hey, that's one of our favorite players here. That was Mickey had something to
yeah.
do with that. I'm just gonna go with that. And
No,
then
that was Dell Demps who pulled that off. He was a
okay.
GM at the time, and that was a great trade. And Drew's an awesome guy,
Yeah.
one of my favorite guys that I've ever met in professional sports. And
Yeah.
look, I've been really happy with it for him and his success with Milwaukee. But awesome guy, awesome
Yeah,
player.
he seems like it. And I just wonder how different, like, because we got into this thread here when they started talking about paying running backs. We were talking about the way positions are so siloed in the NFL. You got a guy who's different, right? Like, Alvin can do a little bit of everything. So you don't he's more positionless. And you've had a few guys like this, and Malcolm's like a Swiss Army knife, CJ Gardner Johnson, Taysom Hill, obviously. So, can you talk to, how GMs might covet that more positionless player and then juxtapose the way the NBA is, which is like nobody's like, hey, we need a power forward. They're like, we need
Right.
a 3-and-D guy. We need a skill set. We need this. In the NFL, it seems like we're in this antiquated mode of like, this is a guard, this is a tackle, this is a running back. Do you see it changing at all, and how different was it from the NBA?
Yeah. Well, it was a lot different. First of all, I think my role with the Pelicans was a little exaggerated. I mean, we had Dell Demps as our general manager. We have David Griffin now, and look, I've stepped back from that. It was more of a case of Tom Benson, the owner, wanted someone to be the interaction between the management of the team and him, and he didn't have the time or energy to do that. At that stage of his life. And so, look, I loved my time there. There's some great people, Dell Demps and Alvin Gentry, and just a number of Monty Williams,
Yeah.
the players. They great people. It's different, though. It is different. I think part of that is because players in the NBA come to the league at such an earlier stage in their life. They're 19 and 20 years old, and they haven't had. A lot of those guys haven't had that experience of college where they're away from home for 4 years or 3 years and doing things on their own. So it's just different.
Yeah.
And then obviously there's fewer players, and each guy has probably a greater impact than any single individual in football. So yeah, it was just different. In terms of Alvin and the running backs, look, I think one of the things that is always valuable, and I think Bill Belichick in New England has done this for longer and more often than anyone, is finding guys that can do multiple things because it helps you. It helps you with your roster management. That's what makes them more valuable. Is that if they can do more tasks, then it frees up your roster to for at other positions and other in terms of depth and other things that you get to do. So. That's what makes Taysom so valuable to us. That's what makes, Alvin so valuable is he can do so many different things. And look, we seek out even offensive linemen that can play, multiple positions on the offensive line and defensive linemen that can, an end that can slide in and rush the passer from inside. So I think that's what makes him adds value to the position.
Why do you think you're so good at drafting OLinemen? Like, without telling the other GMs, can you give me a little something on what you look for?
I think that's a credit it's a credit more than to anyone to our scouting staff. They just, I think, the thing that is always important is to understand exactly what our coaching staff is looking for in terms of the traits and characteristics that they need at every position, and then making sure that gets communicated correctly to our scouts, and that we don't deviate from that. There's always exceptions that exist in our league to a certain amount of traits, but typically we don't look for exceptions because, look, if we're looking for exceptions, we're going to make more mistakes. So
you play the percentages there.
We're pretty much prototype type of team. And we're looking for certain characteristics and looking for certain, off the field characteristics in terms of intelligence and work ethic and those types of characteristics that we value in our locker room.
Yeah, I mean, this Trevor Penning kid, and I mean this is a compliment. He's a real rock eater, isn't he? He's just he loves to mix it up. I've heard about 5 different fights. I texted Cam about him. He said he's a good dude. He's inquisitive, after the play, he's asking Cam for advice, that sort of thing. So he seems like a great kid. He's the kind of tone setter you need. He seems to have improved coming off the injury. He's back this year and run blocking his ass off. How's the pass game coming along for a young guy like that?
Yeah, I think I would say this. I think he's raw in that area, but improving pretty dramatically. And look, we have a great offensive line coach here in Doug Marrone, who was with us back in 06 and when we had Jari Evans and Carl Nix and that group and now he's got Trevor and he's doing a great job with him.
That's awesome. Last question for you. I know cut time's coming up. I'm not going to ask you about any of the players on the roster, but I actually just asked Jeff Fisher this question the other day. Like, who's the toughest cut you've had to make? Because I know that's the hardest part of the business.
Yeah. Good question. I think, there's a lot of them. And the toughest cuts are always the veteran player that's been with you, if not his whole career, then a long period of time. And man, you just it's tough emotionally to let someone go who's contributed so much to your team, your community, the building. Because look, these guys they're great people. I think NFL players they're high achievers. They're intelligent. They're just great people, with very few exceptions. And so they become part of your family. And look, they're appreciated by the secretaries, by every person in your building. And so when you finally have to say, hey, you're probably not good enough anymore, it's time to go. That's hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's really hard. And look, even occasionally, we've got Jimmy Graham back here this year.
Yeah.
And we traded Jimmy after his fifth year, I think, fifth year, I believe it was.
Yeah.
That was tough because I loved Jimmy Graham. We all loved Jimmy Graham, but we, felt like this was the best thing for our team. And look, my daughter, who was probably 5 or 6 at that time, wouldn't speak to me for years.
Right.
About Jimmy Graham. Every year she'd ask me about Jimmy Graham, and then she shows up and she's got his Seattle Seahawks jersey, and then she's got his Green Bay jersey and the Chicago jersey.
Come on, Dad.
And finally this year we got him re-signed, and he came back in the building, but those kinds of things are tough, whether it's a trade or letting someone go. It's like losing a piece of your family sometimes.
Yeah, no question. Relationship business, man. A lot of time at work. Like you said, we know everybody in the building, so I don't envy that job, but you have done a hell of a job doing it for a long time. We appreciate you coming on the show, and we wish you the best of luck this year and hope you come back after a big win or something.
Absolutely, Chris. Anytime. Enjoy talking to you.
Really appreciate it. Likewise.